Hello, everyone, and welcome back yet again for another awesome Pac-12 roundtable. As Spencer has politely offered to join me yet again, tonight is I guess, big night, considering it's your last time until bowl season, and we're doing Oregon State and Cal. And I guess you can probably guess who we're going to start with based on the color scheme. um, but yeah, I hope y'all enjoy. I hope everyone enjoys the show, and it should make for an interesting 30 minutes. So, that being said, let's get into this. And I was actually smart this time. I wrote down all my questions. Oh, sorry, that's not the first one. What is the fan base's attitude on Justin Wilcox?
Well, I think it depends on which fan you ask. I think that he should be under the most pressure of any coach going into 2023. I think he should have the hottest seat, so to speak, but that doesn't mean he has a super hot seat, because when Oregon had their coaching opening, he was reportedly offered the job, decided not to take it for various reasons. We don't need to go down that road. I think it makes sense from both sides as to why he didn't, but he parlayed that into getting an extension from Cal, and on the back of getting that 6-year extension, went 4-8, which is probably not what they had in mind. But the question for the Bay Area schools just continues to be, how content are they with being mediocre and making a bowl every few years? It's just, are they okay being a bottom dweller in the conference, or do they expect to compete at a high level? Now, Stanford, some people might have parted ways with David Shaw sooner than they did, but they probably put a little bit more weight in the COVID season when they were over 500. But then back-to-back losing seasons, and David Shaw was out. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say that if, Cal's athletic department and donors and boosters were willing to pay the money, that a sub-500 season or an uncompetitive season might result in Justin Wilcox getting the boot. But I think there are Cal fans out there, and I feel for them, because there are fans out there who have not been happy with where the program's at, who would like it to be back to where it was, which Cal has been ranked in the top 10 before. And it just kind of feels, even though he should have the most pressure on him, it's not a big talking point within the conference per se, because they're just kind of content. Like it feels sometimes that they're content. I know that not every Cal fan is, but I know that, generally speaking around the program, that's kind of where they are at. I think Cal has the potential to take steps forward this year and get to a bowl game. I don't know that that's a guarantee. Their schedule is fairly tough. But if they get to a bowl game, he stays. But if you're under 500 for a third year in a row, even in a place where, people rightfully question how committed they are to athletics as a whole, I think that is something that will definitely be a conversation if Cal is under 500 for a third full season in a row.
So basically, it just kind of depends on who you ask, more or less.
Yeah, because there hasn't been there are programs in America that already would have parted ways with Justin Wilcox, and there are programs in America that certainly would not have given him an extension after, given the resume that he'd compiled as their head coach at that point in time. But, he doesn't raise a fuss about, hey, I need more of this or I need that or anything. He's not that kind of guy. He's not a bad guy. He's a great guy. He's, someone who, if you go to parents and say, hey, he's leading your son and he is the coach and you're entrusting him, like, he's going to check those boxes. And for elite academic schools like Stanford and Cal, that might be enough for him sometimes. But eventually it wasn't for Stanford. And I think that this is kind of the make or break year for Cal. And, I just know that there are programs out there that have higher standards, so to speak, and would have said 5-7, 4-8. Nope, not good enough. They went up for the first 3 years that he was there, and they have gone down since. And so if they start trending back up, then I imagine he will be just fine. But they have to start trending back up because I think there's enough. I won't say a lot, but I think there will be enough pressure from the fan base and from alumni to say, okay, we have to be able to put together a better product than this because I've seen Cal be a better product than what they have for the last several years.
Okay. So how has Coach?
Oh, you crossed up your coat. Crossed up your
Yes, I
coaches
did.
there.
It's supposed to be Wilcox. I'm sorry. Coach
Yeah.
Wilcox impacted recruiting. What does 2024 recruiting look like for Cal?
Well, they've done well in the portal this year. Cal is not a place that has ever been a great recruiting school that's been able to put together top 20 or even really top 30 classes, but they've made some noise in the portal this offseason. That's the most encouraging thing. And I don't know that with the academic standards at Cal, if you're ever going to be able to bring in everybody that you would like, whether in the portal or from the high school ranks, but they've brought in several good players. What they've been missing is the quarterback position, which they brought in the portal, and I'll get to in just a moment. But they've had a lot of good skill position players and good defensive players as well come through the program while Wilcox has been there. They've had several talented guys. They have Brett Johnson back off injury this year. He could be an NFL caliber defensive lineman. They always have good players in the secondary. Jaden Ott at running back is one of the most dynamic playmakers in the entire conference. At any position on any team, he's really, really good. And so they, had J. Michael Sturdivant. He, unfortunately for Cal, transferred to UCLA. But they still have Jeremiah Hunter, who I think is a good, solid number one wide receiver. And, their tight ends always feel like they're capable of being involved in the passing game and whatnot. But I think when you look at their portal class, it is top 20 in the country this year. So I think that kind of demonstrates the urgency that Justin Wilcox, frankly, needs to be showing. And that's, hey, I have to win this year or I'm not going to be a head coach at Cal, and who knows if I'll get to be a head coach again. Now, he'd get picked up as defensive coordinator in about half an hour if he were let go, but you don't always get a second chance to be a head coach, and thus far, I mean, he hasn't ever won more than 8 games while at Cal. So I think he senses the urgency of what this season means, whether he would admit that publicly or not. But I think he's a capable coach. I don't know about a great one. He's a great defensive coordinator. He was the DC when they went to, I believe, when they went to the college football playoff with Washington in 2016. He's been at Wisconsin, Boise State. Like he's a great defensive coordinator, but he has not always been a big time recruiter. He's a little bit more like Chip Kelly in that sense, where it's just kind of not something that he necessarily thrives at or appears to love. But both guys know how to use the portal clearly, and I think Cal's got plenty of talented players coming in. Power 5 starters, capable players. Sam Jackson at quarterback from TCU, I'm really excited about. And I think they have the potential, and Coach Wilcox knows they need to be able to get, back into bowl eligibility range.
So you mentioned potential. Does Cal have the potential and capability of actually making a bowl game this year?
Of a bowl game, yes. The question as written says big bowl game, no. But their win total, I've been kind of bullish on Cal the entire offseason because, when you've watched Justin Wilcox teams over the years, they have never been terrible. Like they were 4-8 last year. I'm not trying to say that they were secretly a good team. They were not. But when I say terrible, I think what Stanford might be this year, what Colorado was last year, Arizona in 2021, Oregon State in 2017, Washington in 2009, 1-0 win teams. That's terrible. So Cal under Justin Wilcox has struggled in Pac-12 play, but they've had some nice non-conference wins. They did win a bowl game in, I think, his 3rd season when they, that was their best year. They went 8-5. They have the ability as a program under Wilcox to win games, and they have, a pretty clear identity in that sense. But I think that what it has come down to over the last couple years is the defense has fallen off a bit. I expect them to be able to bounce back, especially with Brett Johnson there, Jackson Sermon at linebacker. They've always got good DBs. I think they'll be just fine on defense, and they will be better than what they were a season ago, which was below their standard defensively. But the problem has always been offense. They had Chase Garbers for several years, and, he's fine. He played hard. He's a gamer. You can win some games with him, but he was nothing special. Then they brought in Jack Plummer last year, and I was, going into the year saying kind of the same sort of thing, which is this is underwhelming. I'm not saying he can't make any throws or any plays, but he's a bottom third starter in the conference. That bore itself out, and they haven't been good enough at the quarterback position in a league that has had great quarterbacks and great offenses, and they haven't had the right offensive coordinator in place either. And they made a change to their offensive coordinator position. They moved on from Bill Musgrave. They bring in Jake Spavital from Texas State, where he was the head coach, but he was also the one-time OC at Cal and had a lot of success there. Their offensive line last year was also really bad. They've brought in several transfers along the offensive line, and they have a new offensive line coach. So the reason that I've been, kind of jovially on my show Locked On Pac-12 bullish on Cal is I looked at their win total in the preseason, and it was 4.5, and I said, give me the over. This is a 5 to 6 win team, 7 if things go right. But again, bullish is relative. Like, I was bullish on over 4.5. Well, Vegas now agrees with me because they have bumped up their win total to 5.5.
Yeah.
So they're seeing what I have been seeing, which is that is not a 4 to 5 win team. I think that's more like a 5 to 6 win team. And now you give me Cal's win total at 5.5. I don't know that I would sniff it. But at 4.5, I loved going over because I think it's 5 or 6. But now you're telling me 5 hits the under. Like, I'd stay away from it just from a betting standpoint. But
right.
I think that the team has got enough talent that they've brought in to be better than they were last year. And the biggest thing for me, though, is the shift in offensive philosophy. You have the most dynamic quarterback you've had in a long time from an arm talent and athlete standpoint since Jared Goff, right? He probably isn't as good of a thrower as Jared Goff. He's not as experienced, but he's the best athlete Cal's probably ever had at the quarterback position. He is dynamic. And so when you introduce a spread concept and you're actually going to consistently run RPOs and zone reads and, get your quarterback on the move and be able to do that. Whereas with Jack Plummer, he's a pocket guy. I think that introduces another level or a step forward that the offense can take this year. And I think that that's a positive. And, if I'm on the outside or inside of Cal looking at it and saying, okay, things have not been good, I need to see real changes. Well, new quarterback, from a play style standpoint, new offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator, and a bunch of transfers. That's the sort of urgency that I'd want to see, and it's why I'm encouraged by what they could potentially do this year. So, and to answer your question, they can make a bowl game. I don't think they can win more than 7 games just because their schedule is so tough. If they had UCLA's schedule, it'd be a lot easier, or if they had Oregon State's schedule, it would be a lot easier, or Washington State's, but they have Cal's schedule, and it's pretty brutal, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, speaking of which,
yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's really tough because you're a former Pac-12 North team. Divisions are gone, but they still use the same scheduling format. So what that means is in a conference of 12 teams in which you play 9 conference games, you miss 2 teams from the other division every year. And for Cal to hit all 3 of, I suppose they miss Utah's not on there, right? So that's one of the that's one of the. It's where? Oh yeah, there. Sorry. I was just adjusting my eyes to the graphic there real quick. But for them to hit both LA schools and to have to play Utah while playing everybody in the North, which means you were already going to play Oregon State, and Washington State. It's really tough. And for them to miss Arizona, a team they beat a year ago, and Colorado, a team they lost to a year ago but were better than, that is not a good break in scheduling. And, you have Auburn in there as your Power 5 non-conference opponent. I love that game. I've picked Cal to win that game for quite a while. I have not pivoted off that opinion yet. Though Auburn has brought in a talented portal class, so too has Cal. And
I'm.
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, that may be, but every time I look at Auburn right now, until they can prove me wrong, I just think of the last 2 years against Penn State when you had the close one. I think it was close in Happy Valley, and then Penn State goes down there to Auburn and just runs away with it.
Yeah, I think that Auburn has, a ways to go, which is why Cal has a chance in that game. But by the way, Cal has beaten an SEC opponent under Justin Wilcox before. So anybody who just says, oh, it's an SEC team, they'll never. They went to Mississippi and beat Ole Miss several years ago. So it's not as if it has not been done or that it can't be done. And I have even talked to people who cover Auburn who have asked me about that game before. Said, hey, what do you think of that game? I'm like, I think Auburn could lose, and the response I often get is, yeah, I keep hearing from people that that's not going to be an easy game, that it could be a slip up, and I say that's absolutely correct. And playing they play all 6 conference contenders according to the preseason odds on their schedule, or else I would say they're locked to make a bowl game. But I think their win total, ticking up in the eyes of odds makers, is indicative of what I've been saying, which is they have the potential. Like, I can see 6 wins on here. North Texas, Idaho, those are wins. I think they're much better than Stanford. That's 3. Arizona State, I think they can beat Arizona State. Between Oregon State and UCLA, I think they can win 1, and then they just need to pull an upset and beat Auburn. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
Do you think that this team is too incapable of pulling what people would probably call the blanket upset, where they can beat Auburn, they can beat Utah in Utah, which I'm already going to tell you is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, no,
And
you're not winning. You're not winning at Utah, and you're probably not going to win at Oregon. You're probably not going to win at Washington. Well, Cal has done weird things in Washington before. So of those road games, I would say Washington is the most likely team that you would beat. Doesn't mean I think it's likely, but it's the team you have the best chance against between Oregon, Washington, and Utah. But I look at the UCLA and the Oregon State games, and look, I don't think I can pick them to beat USC, but between Oregon State and UCLA, can they win one of those games?
Or both.
Both would be. I would be the most obnoxious sports talk guy in the world if Cal beats Oregon State and UCLA and ends the year. I just need them to beat Auburn. If they beat Auburn, I am going to gloat for an entire show for 30 minutes. I'm just going to come on and talk for 30 minutes and say, I told you in March this was going to happen, and few, if any, believe me, and here we are. Anyway.
So,
tough schedule.
Last quick question here, because we do need to transition for your sake.
Yes.
Does Cal and Auburn have a home and home, or is this just a one-off?
No, this is a home and home. They go to Auburn next year.
Oh, thank goodness. All of this crazy SEC's better than everybody. Well, Penn State just beat you twice. Cal's probably about to beat you at least once, if not twice. SEC's not as strong as it used to be.
I mean, it's not. Well, hold on. It's not as deep, but at the top, those teams would win every conference in America, every single one of them. Like if you give me Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, and frankly LSU, they will be the favorite in every single conference that they go to. But if you pluck like a Kentucky and put them in the Pac-12, no, they're not winning them. They're not. They're not winning the Pac. It's not that big of a gap.
Right. Trying to. I guess that'll work. All right. So now let's talk about the Beavs. What is the fan base attitude towards Jonathan Smith? Now, I remember, because I believe the Ohio State game was his first game when we
put a song
on him. And I remember then, because I still watch that game every once in a while, um, I remember then that the fan base, from what they were saying on TV at least, was pretty good towards Jonathan Smith, and he did play for them. So
Mm-hmm.
for his sake, that does help.
Yeah, he is fan favorite, awesome, fantastic. Has beaten Oregon twice already since he's been there. Once was the COVID year, and then once was that crazy game a year ago. But in the eyes of Oregon State fans, it does not matter, and they love this guy. They should love this guy because he is theirs. He is a homegrown, player to coach of sorts, and he's a really good football coach. And he is very well respected in the country, or across the country rather, amongst big time college football coaches. Like everybody respects the job that he does. I'm an Oregon fan. Obviously, I want to beat the Beavs every single year, but Jonathan Smith is a really good football coach, and he's so perfect for Oregon State. Like they love him. They're enamored with him. That they will not ask him to leave until it's like the inverse of you're gonna have to drag me away kicking and screaming, right? Like you would have to do something so terrible for them to say, I don't want Jonathan Smith to be our head coach anymore. But when you look at what he's done, he's just done a slow, steady, methodical build. It's very old school, but it has to be at Oregon State. Until DJ Uyunglele transferred in, you're not getting big-time transfers. You're not getting big-time recruits. It's slow, it's steady, it's development, it's coaching, and you just look at what they did in the full seasons that they played. I discount COVID because, like, I hear people all the time say, like, oh, Oregon went to 3 straight Pac-12 championship games. I'm like, okay, let's calm down. We went to 2 in a row. We went to 2 in a row, and then we appeared in another one. We were chosen, like, anyway. So all that was weird, and so when you look at what Oregon State did. He takes over a 1-11 team. It's a dumpster fire. It was a dumpster fire in Corvallis at Oregon State. You don't have a recruiting hub. You don't have a rich program tradition of winning at a high level. You've never been to a conference championship game. Nothing. And he won 2 games his first year. And then he won 5. Oh, that was better. And then he won 7. And then this past year he won 10. And they hadn't done that since 2006. And it's just a testament to him understanding what is required to win at Oregon State, believing in his vision, and knowing that it's not going to take 1 year. It's not a USC reboot. It's not a Washington reboot. You don't have inherent level of talent on the roster, and it just needs the right coaching. No, this is going to take time, much like what Stanford has right now, as we were talking about yesterday. That is going to be the same sort of thing because of the college football world that we are in. The build can happen, but it has to be allowed to happen. And Oregon State has not been in a hurry. That their fans are very passionate, but also very, I've found, and I know a lot of them, so I have a lot of friends who are Oregon State fans. They're very cerebral about what it takes to win. None of them expected, we got to have a winning season. But you never heard anywhere. And Oregon State fans deserve credit for this because there are some places that have fans that have unrealistic expectations. I never heard Oregon State fans saying, we expect to be winning by year 2, over 500, and we expect to be contending for a conference title in year 3. Never. They're just in the mindset of, we just want to get better. We just want growth. We just want we just want to take a step. And their first year, 2 wins, that was a step forward. 5 wins, that was a step forward. 7 wins, that was just step after step after step, and give it time. And now they're here, and they're a legitimate conference title contender in 2023 with perhaps the most favorable schedule, along with UCLA, of any of the teams that are seen as capable of winning the Pac-12.
Speaking of winning the Pac-12 and impacts, how has Coach Smith impacted recruiting, and what does 2024 look like for the Beavers?
Well, the build has resulted in getting players out of the transfer portal like DJU. And look, they got hit by the portal as well, losing Omar Spates, their leading tackler from a season ago. He goes down to LSU. That's, I had a college coach in a different sport one time dropped this phrase on me, and I kind of like it. Omar Spate's going to LSU. That's called getting NIL'd. That's that's what it was. At least I don't know that that's confirmed, but like, come on, we all understand. So that's something that is a negative, but the recruiting element, again, I don't think the expectations are ever very high. But they brought in Kelsey Howard, who's going to be on campus this fall, 4-star defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't getting that guy in 2017. So you're just starting to get to the point where you're bringing in a caliber recruit consistently that you just weren't seeing 5 years ago. And that's a testament to what they've done. And they brought in Aiden Childs, who's the quarterback of the future. That's a big-time quarterback prospect. That guy looks like he should be, he's a true freshman this year. If DJ Uyunglele struggles, Childs is so talented, there will be chatter. I've already seen chatter around of like, hey, how long is DJ's leash? Or, should he be, benched the way he was at Clemson if he starts underperforming and Childs go in? Like, Childs' talent is immense, and there just haven't been a lot of quarterback prospects like that for Oregon State. So as you continue to win, as you continue to get name brand recognition, you'll be able to bring in those sorts of players. And they're seeing the fruits of that, of their own labor. And I think that'll only continue to improve. I don't think they can pull a top 20 recruiting class, but could they grab a couple key players out of the portal, like a DJU, year in and year out? Yeah, I don't see why not.
Does OSU have the ability and pieces in place for another 10-win season? Which, by the way, I read, and I believe, an interesting fact earlier that Oregon State's only had like 2 or 3 other double-digit win seasons.
I believe it's 3. I can double check that right now, but I believe the answer is 3. So their first one, and college football was very different in like the middle of the 20th century. You weren't always playing quite as many games, but they had one in 2000 under Dennis Erickson when they won the Fiesta Bowl with Jonathan Smith. They had one under Mike Riley in 2006, and then this past season. So of their 3 10-plus win seasons in program history, Jonathan Smith has been at the center of it for 2 of them, which is a testament to the caliber of player he was at quarterback and the caliber of coach that he is. So they are definitely capable, and their schedule breaks in a way. I don't know if you have that graphic or not, but you should throw it up there right now because it breaks in a way that makes it feasible in every capacity. Not a given that they will win the conference, that they will get to the conference championship, or that they will get to 10 wins again, but it is more than realistic to say their win total is 8.5.
Yeah. And
that's because they miss USC. They had them a year ago. They get UCLA instead. I think they're going to beat UCLA, especially because the game's at Reser Stadium. You look at the road games that they have to play in conference. They have to play 5 of them, which is not a great break. They play 6 road games and 6 home games. Most teams are, there are teams that play only 4 road games all year. Like, I don't think Michigan plays more than 4 or 5 road games. But anyway, Oregon State starts with San Jose State, UC Davis, and San Diego State. Road, home, home. That first game against Washington State in conference play on September 23rd is going to tell us a lot, frankly, about both teams, and it'll set the tone for conference play. But that is a big game for Oregon State because then you come back home, you play Utah the next week. You got the 2-time defending champs. But to miss USC, a perfect break would have been miss USC and miss Utah here, but that can't get everything that you want. But they miss Arizona State in addition to missing USC. So their road games in conference are just very, very manageable. You look at that road game at Oregon. Probably it should be a loss, but hey, last year should have been a loss for them as well. They were trailing 31-10. They came back to win, and they didn't have to complete a pass to do so. So if you look at that game and say, okay, that's probably a loss, Oregon at Autzen Stadium, pretty tough to beat. Their other 4 conference road games, Washington State, Cal, Arizona, Colorado. It could not break any better. And then to have Washington, Utah, and UCLA all at home, and Stanford comes to Reser Stadium as well. They've been a dominant team at Reser the last 2 seasons. The only team to win there has been USC. Utah lost last time they were there in 2021. Oregon lost there in 2022. USC should have lost there in 2022. So that's just such a massive, massive break, and this stuff matters. When you go look back at every great season a team has had, there's probably a scheduling break or two in there. And Oregon State, this feels like a moment for them. If they're going to get to the conference championship game for the first time ever, this is a great year to do it. You've upgraded at quarterback. You have suffered some defensive losses, but I think they still have enough personnel to be good on that side of the ball, and they retain their defensive coordinator. And this is just a massive, massive break in scheduling to have to play, 4 of the 5 other conference contenders, but to have 3 of them at home. And if you do really well in those games, you could go into that game at Autzen Stadium on November 24th as confident as you could possibly be.
I kind of see the 10 wins ish. I can see a 9-3 regular season finish or a 10-2, because it's gonna, to me, the losses are gonna come somewhere in a combination of Washington State, Utah, Washington, Oregon. You're going to have your 2 to 3 losses somewhere in there.
I agree. But if you say that those games, UCLA October 14th, you can't sleep on them, but I like Oregon State at home. So let's say that Oregon State wins all of their home games against UC Davis, San Diego State, Stanford, and UCLA. And they are able to beat teams of which they are better than Arizona, Colorado, and Cal. And those games are on the road. And again, no Gibbons there. At Arizona, definitely a trap game. At Washington State, straight up tricky game. Cal and Colorado have caused the Beavs to stumble before in the past. But let's say you're able to get past those teams. It'll come down, as you said, to those 4. And I think those 4 games at some level are go either way games or coin flip games. Or at the very least, you could tell me that this team wins or that team wins, and I'd believe you. Right now on July 25th, as we do the show here. So if you split those games, there's your 10-2. But even if you go 1-3 in those games, that's still looking at 9-3. So I think that's why their win total is 8.5. The Pac-12 is deep, so it's not going to be a gimme. But Oregon State is talented enough to win 10 games. I don't know if I see 11. I think 10-2 is their ceiling. Yeah, I want to say like off a 10-win season, yeah, they could do it. But I think between Utah, it's just asking a lot, even at home, to say between Utah, Washington, and then having to go at Oregon. You're only going to lose one of those games and then not stumble anywhere else. I think that's asking a lot. So I think 10-2 is kind of their ceiling there, and I think their floor is, gosh, I don't see how they could win fewer than 7 games. Like San Jose State on the road should not be a problem. UC Davis, San Diego State at home, neither should be. San Diego State could give you fits, but that should be 3-0. Arizona. Okay, let's say you lose that, but Colorado, Cal, that gets you to 5. Stanford 6. You're not going to lose to every one of those contending teams.
Right.
I think 7. I think 7 to 10 is their win range here.
I mean, as a Pac-12 guy, I'm sure you can attest to this, but to me, it feels like the conference as a whole is being like underrated, because it seems to me that like the conference as a whole, there is the potential there for every team or almost every team to get anywhere from 7 to 10 plus wins.
Yeah.
Depending on the team.
Yeah, it depends on the team. But I mean, that's why you play the games, right? You play the games because you can talk about this stuff on paper, but at the end of the day, they have to not go and lose to a Cal team that I talked about earlier. I think has real upside. Like, I could see Oregon State losing that game. They'll be favored. I don't think they'll be a massive favorite. I don't think they're going to go in there 20-point favorites or anything like that. But, Colorado, I think Colorado's still too far down to win that game, even though it's in Boulder. I would watch. I think the key road games outside of Oregon, of course, are Arizona and Washington State. Those are the games where you say you're capable of going 2-0 there. You should go 2-0. But it wouldn't be, upset of the century necessarily if Washington State knocks you off or if Arizona were to beat them either.
So as we look at the schedule, the last big question for this part is,
I like that.
Can Oregon State make a New Year's Six Bowl?
Yes, they are capable of doing so, but they have to be in the Pac-12 title game. They have to be, well... Okay, yes. I think they'd have to get in through winning the Pac-12, but is that possible? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen them beat Utah before. I watched them outplay USC for 3.5 quarters, and it's not as if they are in the same position as they were a year ago. I think they're in a better position at the quarterback spot. So, the defense might take a little step back, but I think the quarterback, you can get more out of there than you did a season ago with Ben Gulbranson, who was there for a majority of the season. Mm-hmm. And I think that if you can do that with Ben Gulbranson, then with DJ Uiagalelei, who should not be asked to throw the ball for 300 yards a game, I think that he's an upgrade there, and you should be able to contend at the very least for a Pac-12 title spot. And even though I think their ceiling is 10-2, guess what? If you're 10-2 and then you win the Pac-12 title game, that's a New Year's Six Bowl. So yes, they can. I think it is an uphill battle, as it always is. But I think for Oregon State, your goal is to just get to be in the Pac-12 title game because they haven't been there before, and then see who you're playing and whether or not you should expect to win.
So, okay. One, what is your thoughts on the few rematches that we have seen between you have a game in the regular season and then you end up playing them again in the bowl game, which we saw back in 94
It depends on the match. It depends on the matchup.
2010-11. Because my thought is, okay, if the Big Ten and the SEC can get 3 teams in the New Year's Six Bowls, why can't the Pac-12 between your Pac-12 champion, your Pac-12 loser?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can. You had two teams in the New Year's Six a year ago. USC was in the Cotton Bowl and Utah was in the Rose Bowl. But things would have to break pretty nicely for the Pac to get 3 teams in. You'd have to have a one-loss conference champion. Let's just say it's USC. And then you would need a 10-2 Oregon team probably. And then a 10-2 or 10-3. But even then, that gets tricky. You would need a team. You would need 2 teams at 11-1 going into your conference title game, and then you would need a 10-2. So a 10-2 Oregon, for instance, 11-1 Washington against 11-1. I don't know. USC in the Pac-12 title game. Winner of the playoff, loser probably Cotton Bowl again, like USC had last year. And then you'd have a 10-2 team that gets an at-large. Possible. But I mean that's kind of hard.
So that's kind of my thinking is, like I said before, USC is my playoff team. So probably 11-1. Oregon State, I would, after looking at the schedule and having this conversation, I could really see a New Year's Six bid, whether it's they're the 3rd best team in the conference, but they're still good enough. So they get the Rose Bowl or they get the Cotton Bowl, and then probably either you guys with the shirt that you have on or that matchup on 9/29 would be your Rose Bowl participant.
Yeah, I mean there are scenarios where it could happen, but priority for the Pac-12, try to get a team into the playoff, but I don't know if that comes to fruition.
Right. And so I guess last things being last, I know you've talked about this on your show before, but quickly, what is your opinion of the future with the Pac, or not the Pac-12, the 12-team playoff?
I hate the 12-team playoff. I think it's disgusting. It tears at the fabric of what makes college football great, and you're just trying to make it the NFL. And I'm not a fan. They've always been different. They've always had different feels. They've always been different products, and everyone just wants to try and make them the same. And I think it's stupid, but money talks and bleep walks.
I can agree with that. I don't know. I feel like there's advantages to the 12 team, but
It's not like all that. This is a much longer conversation, but
right.
it's not all downside, but the negatives far outweigh the positives. The best example of that is if you had a 12-team playoff last year, Tennessee beating Alabama does nothing to Alabama's playoff chances, and that sucks.
That's true.
I think that absolutely sucks. It's always been the best regular season sport in the world, and now we're going to tear it apart because people can make more money. So, oh well. I don't get what I want.
So with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it here, if that's all right with you.
Yep. Nope. I got to bounce.
So everyone, please go over to Locked On Ducks, Oregon Ducks, and Locked On Pac-12 and subscribe. You see, you can watch some more awesomeness from Spencer. Check out Shady Sports Network. We just got brought on over there as a contributor. Be doing some videos for them, writing some articles every once in a while. And go subscribe to their YouTube channel. Real quick, for you, what's your rough estimate of your sub count right now? Because I know you said you're pushing towards 3K before the season starts.
Yeah, I'm at over 3,000 on Pac-12 on YouTube, over 2,800 on Ducks, and then there are hundreds more on both shows that listen on podcasts.
So you're pushing for the Ducks one, right?
Yeah, trying to get that up to 3,000. So
yes,
just
everyone
subscribing, by all means, make it happen.
Everyone, please go over and help this man out. He's amazing, awesome man. I love his content. He's a great creator. You always have great shows and great people on. I want to thank you again for coming on, and I hope to be in touch during bowl season.
Absolutely.
Maybe we can work something out. And everyone on this channel, please subscribe and leave your comments down below, and we will see you in the next video. So I want to thank everyone for being here and have a good rest of your day.